Ladies and gentlemen, we will start shortly. In the next 5 minutes, Minister will be here. We're just finalizing some details.
This one is on.
Good morning to all of you. Seeing that we are already late, I won't waste time by ceremonies because this gentleman here has been eyeballing me the whole morning. I would like to just introduce you to the panel quickly. You obviously know Minister Malusi Gigaba in the middle. To the left of him is our Deputy Minister Fatima Kohan. And to the right of the Minister is DDG of Immigration, Mr. Jackie McKay. The Minister's going to read a short statement, and then we'll open the floor for Q&A. I believe we have one or two people in Pretoria. For the Q&A, we'll revert to you when we've taken rounds from Cape Town. I'll hand it over to you, Minister. Yes, Minister. I think you just press the...
Okay. Thank you, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all most sincerely for your attendance this morning as we make certain announcements with regard to the implementation of the new regulations which came into effect effectively in a way which balances South Africa's openness to legitimate travelers as well as developmental and security. Since the announcement of the new regulations, we have consistently maintained that we welcome constructive engagement from stakeholders on the implementation of these regulations. We thank those stakeholders who have engaged us substantively and constructively. The information acquired has assisted us and empowered the department to serve South Africans and foreign visitors and our various stakeholders more efficiently. Subsequent to our meeting with the Minister of Tourism, Mr. Derek Anekom, we have also met with tourism and aviation industry stakeholders, including representatives from IATA, ASATA, the South African Tourism Council, and announced the formation of a joint task team between the department and the industry as a vehicle for ongoing engagement. We are enormously pleased with the establishment of this task team and trust that its representatives will bring, industry representatives will bring invaluable perspectives and information on the tourism and travel sector and help us improve communication with their clients and the sector as a whole. We have further continued to engage with the representatives of the film industry and soccer fraternity. The different stakeholders have drawn our attention to the challenges relating to the new requirements for traveling children, which come into effect on October 1st, 2014, which were instituted to ensure the safety of children in line with the Children's Act of 2005 and our own international obligations. In particular, the stakeholders have highlighted challenges regarding the requirement that all children entering or exiting South Africa be in possession of a passport, an unabridged birth certificate, and written permission from both parents or guardians of the child, authorizing that child's travel. While the requirement that all children possess a passport has been implemented successfully, challenges have been raised regarding the requirements for an unabridged birth certificate and written permission. Stakeholders have alerted us to two main challenges. Firstly, ensuring accurate and timely communication to missions abroad, travel operators and prospective travelers around the world about the new requirements. And secondly, that parents and those authorized to travel with children have time to obtain the required documentation in time for their travel plans. It was put to the department that while the new regulations are accepted as necessary and are fully supported, due to these challenges mentioned above, and particularly in light of the upcoming peak travel periods for families, which is December to January for the festive season and April for Easter, a postponement would greatly assist travelers and the sectors as a whole. The department has taken this input into consideration, along with our obligation to ensure the safety of children entering or exiting the Republic. Having taken all of this into account, we have granted a postponement of these two particular requirements, the unabridged birth certificate and written permission, to June 1st, 2015. During this postponement, I have directed the Deputy Director General, Mr. Jackie McKay, sitting on my right, responsible for immigration services, information is available to all prospective South African children born from the 3rd of March 2013 onwards, as the department began issuing unabridged birth certificates on the spot for those children whose births were registered from that date. Therefore, the population of children or minors that will be affected by the implementation of these regulations would be children born between 1996 and February 2013. We have established that approximately 17 million children were born during this period. Out of this population, approximately 1.1 million have been issued with valid South African passports. The postponement, as well as today's statement, is aimed at encouraging citizens to apply well in advance and obtain the required unabridged birth certificates for the minors and children they intend traveling with. Furthermore, between now and the implementation date of the regulations, citizens who apply for passports in respect to children or minors will be encouraged by frontline officials to apply for unabridged birth certificates for such minors at the same time. In closing, we would like to encourage all our stakeholders to participate further, to anticipate further regulatory changes from the Department of Home Affairs, in particular around the Births and Deaths Registration Act. We envision amending the Act to implement more stringent processes for the late registration of births, which we intend to end after December 2015. In this regard, we call on South Africans to comply with our plea that they register the births of their children either in the hospitals at which the child was born or within the first 30 days at any of our offices across the country, so that we are able to capture their registration of birth timely. Because going into the future, the early registration of birth will be the only gateway into the National Population Register for any South African. Thereafter, the early registration of birth, as I have said, immediately at the hospital or within 30 days, will be the only way into the National Population Register, and therefore we expect that everybody would comply with the regulations that we are implementing, because we do need to safeguard the integrity of the National Population Register and subsequently of the documents which we issue, whether for identification or travel. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We will open the floor for questions. I'll take 3 questions at a time. Just tell us which media house you're from and your name and ask the question, starting with you, sir. On the right.
Thank you. Jan Enjebaar for the Sunday Times. Firstly, Minister, if I leave early, it's not out of poor manners. We need to run, because your former people at Eskom are telling us what they're doing, and I don't want to miss that. That's also important.
So basically, you just love the news.
That's why I do what I do, so for what it's worth. Okay. Firstly, just as a second language English speaker, what on earth are asymmetries of information, which is in your 4th paragraph? And then, secondly, just right at the end, where you speak about it's the only way into the National Population Register. I mean, much of the trouble, I think, which has been caused by this whole situation, has been from the fact that the state, and it's great that you've changed your minds, but that the state was very prescriptive. Now, in this case, obviously, anyone who knows immigration law knows that, and citizenry law in this country knows, that you are guaranteed citizenship if you're born in this country. That law was changed 2 years ago. Now, surely you can't imply that if you do not register your child's birth within 30 days, it's just he becomes a stateless person, which is the implication of this. I'm sure that's not what you're implying, but maybe you need to be clear.
Thank you. I can't wait for you to leave, sir. But we'll take another question at the back there.
Wyndham Hartley from Business Day. Minister, you stated in your in your statement that you're very, very pleased about the establishment of a task team between yourselves and the industry. Wouldn't it have been a bit helpful if you'd done that before announcing the regulations?
We'll take one more question for this round, and then we'll allow the panel to answer the questions. If there's any questions, I know Gay might have a question. No. Going. Okay, we'll take that question there.
Minister, I am from Ground Up News. My name is Tariro. My question concerns this paragraph, which is talking about children moving from one country, like say, but now I'm talking about immigrants' children. I'm sorry I have to drag you away from this to the ZPS. I've seen some foreigners, mainly from Zimbabwe, with the children who were born here after the parents acquired the ZPS, the ZDP, which is now ZPS. The children are not documented, yet the parents are the holders of ZPS. How challenging will it be for the ministry maybe to integrate those children, or to issue them maybe under the parents' permits, so that when they go in and out of South Africa, they won't become undesirable?
Thank you. I remember you asked us for permission to attend, and I said you can come discuss our immigration issues, specifically around our announcement. But I'll obviously allow the panel to answer that question. But for any other questions that you'd like, which are not related to this current announcement, I would encourage you to speak to me, and then I'll make sure you get all the answers that you need. Sure.
Thank you.
I hand it over to the Minister.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the questions. I think I need to make a few points very clear. The first one is that the regulations stay. What we are announcing today are some slight reviews arising out of the consultation processes that we've been undertaking. And I don't think anybody should say to us that because you consulted before the regulations and you announced the regulations, you must therefore not continue engaging stakeholders, because that would be undesirable. So we will continue engaging with the stakeholders. And as we have said before, the regulations we've announced are not cast in stone. If we can find better regulations, we will announce those. Just as when we concluded that such regulations were necessary, somebody could have asked us the question, why didn't you announce them 10 years ago? But 10 years ago, we probably didn't know that there were better regulations that we could arrive at. And we've arrived at them now. And if we come up with better ways to manage the movement of children, the movement of tourists and other travelers into the country in the future, if circumstances change, if material conditions change, we will announce new regulations that take into consideration the passage of time and the new challenges being experienced at that moment. And we have said our doors are open, and we've listened to the various stakeholders that have approached us. We are not having a change of heart, not at all. We are accommodating a request as practicable as possible from the people who've come to us and said, could you consider this? And we have said, sure, so that we don't impact negatively on you, let's consider it. But what we will do is obviously to heighten our vigilance at our ports of entry with regard to the entry and exit of children, because we do not want this to be used as a vista to commit precisely the crimes that we were trying to prevent by announcing these regulations. It became clear as we were listening to the different stakeholders, including ordinary people who were coming forward to us, that people have different types of information, not proper. So, for example, even as we had said that the new regulations with regard to the child passport will come into effect as of the 1st of October, there were people who were panicking, thinking that we were immediately implementing them. And so they were worried that because they didn't have, prior to the 1st of October, an unabridged birth certificate, yet they needed to travel with their children, therefore, they would be prevented from doing so. The other challenge was foreigners who thought that they needed to have the South African type unabridged birth certificate in order to travel with their children into South Africa. And so we've had to try and clarify this. And we think that the request from the travel agencies, the tourism sector, and airlines, that we extend the time for them to work with us to explain to their clients is a reasonable request, and that is why we are granting it. Insofar as the early registration of birth, we want to insist, register your child within 30 days. It's a long enough time. It's a long enough time. I don't think why anybody should be interested that we should have a polluted national population register by encouraging people to register their children beyond 30 days. And we're not saying that your child is being denied citizenship if they are not registered within 30 days. We're just simply saying, register your child as early as possible so that we can safeguard the integrity of the National Population Register. We deal with real problems where we are. Real problems. Right now, we have to undertake a project to audit the NPR and to the best of our abilities, and there cannot be a perfect mechanism. Clean it up so that those who find themselves fraudulently into the NPR actually are cleaned out. And from where we sit, the main culprit has been the late registration of birth process, which allows a person X not born in South Africa to pay a traditional authority or some other person to come and vouch for them, that they actually are South African, they were born here, I know them for a fact. Where are their parents? Oh no, their parents have died. Who were their parents? Then either they hit a log jam or they concoct the parents in order to have this birth registered. Now, here are the challenges that we are dealing with. But this is not the only one. There's a number of others relating to this. And so we need to close the gap. And really, this is no convenience at all. It is no convenience. I've heard a lot of people talking, some of them saying, no, not every child is born in hospital. But even the children not born in hospital, nobody gives birth to a child and not take that child to a clinic soon after birth. They don't wait 30 days. They don't wait 1 year. As soon as you give birth to a child at home, even in a taxi, you then rush the child to hospital so that the child can be checked by the doctors if they are fine. And you start the immunization processes of this child. Now, I don't understand why it should be different when it comes to registering this child. Actually, just come and register the child within the first 30 days. We're not prescribing where you must give birth. We're just simply saying, if it was in a hospital, register the child there. If not at a hospital, go to Home Affairs within the first 30 days, register your child so that we can have this child on our system, and then we can prevent subsequent problems insofar as wrongful entries arising out of a vista created by the late registration of birth. That is the reality we are dealing with. That is what we are not reviewing. It's going to be like this. Come 31 December 2015, the late registration of birth process comes to an end. In actual fact, the population of people that were born and grew up without identity documents is actually declining, because we have 38 million people in possession of green barcoded documents. We've got many people now who are born in South Africa and are registered for birth. There are instances in rural areas particularly where people still have no access to Home Affairs, where they need to come forward and conduct the late registration of birth process. That is in regard to the late registration of birth process, and we're dealing with those, we're finalizing those cases. Insofar as anybody else, our footprint is expanding. We've got over 100 mobile units. They go out to rural areas. They reach out to as many people as possible. We register them for birth. We register them for identity documents and many other services. And so we think that this concern shouldn't arise at all. Now, the question about shouldn't we have done this before the regulations? No, I don't think it's relevant. We will continue consulting with the sectors. If other sectors, we've been talking to the soccer industry, and they've been bringing issues to our attention. Now, At what point were we going to sit and wait for people's opinions before we start implementing the regulations? How long were we going to have to wait? The question becomes rhetorical. And I think what we are doing now is to respond not in terms of all the regulations. It's just two aspects of the regulations we're talking about today. It's the unabridged birth certificate and the permission to travel with the child, written permission to travel with the child. And we're saying we're postponing them. We're not doing away with them. We're just postponing until the 1st of June next year to allow the people affected, the industry to consult and communicate and inform their members, and the people affected to try without pressure to apply for unabridged birth certificates for their children. But we're also taking proactive steps on the part of the department. There are people who currently have applied for passports, for child passports. There are people whose children are in possession of passports. And so we are saying those people, we are going to take the proactive steps to convert the birth certificates of their children into unabridged birth certificates, because they already are in possession of passports, or their parents have applied for their travel passports. And so we will convert their birth certificates into unabridged birth certificates so that they are ready in case at any time they might need to travel. Secondly, we are saying in case anybody comes to apply for a child passport at Home Affairs, our officials will then advise them to instantly apply for an unabridged birth certificate, so that we try and minimize the anxiety that arises out of the pressure, the closeness of time to travel, and the waiting for an unabridged birth certificate. We will also undertake a process, because when we've looked at these 17 million children who were born between 1996 and 2013, February, we think that we can undertake a process, and that's what we're exploring, to rather convert all their birth certificates into unabridged birth certificates so that they are available on our systems when people apply. Now, that's going to take some time, but it's not something that we are too concerned about, because we think that the period between now and June 1st will give the travelers sufficient time to apply for the documents that we need, so that they are able to travel with their children as they need to. The question about children of Zimbabwean parents who are on DZP, I didn't properly get it. I don't know, JK or DM, if you did.
I think they are saying, can the children allowed to stay with their parents whilst they are in South Africa? That's the gist that I got. If you remember, we said that if they apply, those children need to apply for enabling documents or a visa to be able to stay with their parents in South Africa.
It's what's the name of the visa?
It's a relatives visa.
Okay, yeah, please.
There are two categories that could possibly fit the question that you were asking. The first would be where children were born in South Africa to parents who held the DZP permits. Now, they are no different from children who are born to any other immigrants in South Africa. They need to be, their births will be recorded at the institution where they were born, so at the hospital where they were born. Those records need to be taken to the Zimbabwean embassy, and the child's birth must be then registered. So in other words, the child will acquire a birth certificate, right? Once that happens, the parents of the child would have to apply for a visa for that child to accompany their parents in South Africa. So with a birth certificate, you're then able to do that. And that would apply, I imagine, as well to the ZDP process. If a child is born while the parent holds a ZDP permit, similarly, their birth must be registered at the Zimbabwean embassy. A birth certificate has to be produced for the purposes of applying for a visa to accompany the parents.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. I don't know if your question around the asymmetries of information was answered, but it's merely a question of, do the people that need the information that they need, do they have it? And in many instances, they don't have the right information. So stakeholder engagements for us have also been about giving the right people that information. Not to say that the fine work that you gentlemen are doing isn't enough, but we find that when we speak directly with targeted audiences that are affected by regulations, we get a better sense of, we leave more amicable than when we depend on the media to inform certain stakeholders.
Time is running out, but I have to say, shocked, and I didn't know that was possible still, because there seems to me to be a lack of human understanding for people's circumstances, and I'm sorry to raise it. But I mean, it's as if there's no understanding that some people actually sometimes make mistakes. So what are you to do if you didn't register your child's birth for any reason in the first month? Given that the block answer that we're now getting is, oh, it ends on the 31st of December. And that certainly is the impression being created for some regulatory reason. The point is, the obviously unintended consequence would be that a child that's 40 days old, through no fault of its own, is now, yet again, because the state, let's not say the government, because the state has a regulation, is now in a very difficult position. So please don't create a new situation where there's an asymmetry of information, and tell us what you're to do if that didn't happen, if you actually made a mistake and now your child would be suffering because of it.
Please don't be shocked before you've heard the answer. At least wait for the answer, or else don't ask the question. But we'll take your question too.
Minister Gigaba, MC Ferrara from Saba. Does the postponement, what does that mean for people who have now in the meanwhile already fallen foul of these regulations? I mean, the 6-month-old baby was declared an undesirable. Is that being changed now?
We'll take a question from the front, and then the gentleman in the shirt there.
Abongwe Kobogana from the SABC. Minister, before I got shocked myself, I just want to know, what would you say from somebody who would say this is one of the weak points, the fact that you have accepted the postponement of this? Would say this is an acceptance from your side that it was a weak point from your side, that department, not to see that enough time has not been given to deal with this issue. Thanks.
One more question there, and then we'll let the panel answer the questions.
Mike Cohen from Bloomberg News. Minister, forgive me if I haven't been following these regulations as closely as I should, but when I last looked at this issue, the other big objection to these regulations was the requirement for people to have to report in person to visa officers to provide the biometric data, saying it was more difficult. If that requirement is in fact still in place, why were those objections not taken into account, and what is your reasoning for that, making it more difficult for people to access visas? Thanks.
Hand it over to you, Minister. You can take a question.
Look, I don't think that it's worth it to respond to Sam's shock. There's a lot of things, Sam, that will shock you in this world. For example, that you probably do need to have a driver's license to get on the road. It doesn't matter how much you might think you have a human right to drive without a license, but you need one. And a whole lot of other things that you need to have, that you need to comply with, the regulations that are there. You'll be shocked to think that you need to do those things, even though you might think that you don't need to. You might be shocked to learn that you cannot walk naked on the street. even though you think it's your human right. So here is a fact. It is possible, we've done and are doing everything possible to ensure that children, parents of children born in the country can comply with the regulations that we are putting up as we are announcing them. And so they will be facilities everywhere. That's why we've established these birth registration facilities in hospitals. That's why we have are expanding our footprints, procuring mobile units. We have over 100 mobile units. What could be the human condition that you seem to know about that would necessitate that in 30 days you cannot register your child? I can't seem to think of any. Yes.
The basic situation in law would be that you are
No,
sanctioning the child for a mistake it didn't commit.
You are talking about a human condition. I've asked you for a human condition. You said you're answering me. No.
Sam, let's not have a discussion.
Sam, let's not do this. Let's not do this. Then the second question regarding the postponement and children declared undesirable. I don't seem to understand what was the question. Okay. And then with regard to the question from Abongwe, no, it's not an acceptance that there is a weak point. What we are saying is that we will continue. You see, we wouldn't say we are open to continuous engagement with the sector if we were not going to be open to the suggestions which they are making to us. We are very much open to the suggestions they are making to us, and we consider their conditions and whether they will be affected in a negative way by what we are suggesting. And that's why we are making this announcement. If we didn't want to listen to what they are raising with us, we would have kept our doors shut. Remember that we had a lot of time to engage with the immigration, the immigration board. And in the board, there are representatives of the industry, there are representatives of the private sector, there are academics, there are representatives of different government departments, the Immigration Regulatory Board. And they considered all of these issues. They considered the timelines that were being put up. And we acted on the advice which they gave to us. But it's quite clear that in the practical implementation of the regulations, it's not the regulations themselves that are a problem. It is some practical challenges which they are facing, such, for example, as we have said, asymmetries of information, different types of information existing amongst the travelers, amongst the industry members and sectors, which require that we give the industry sufficient time to explain what documents are required for a traveler traveling with a child, to give them sufficient time to apply for some of those documents in cases where they don't. And we are taking into consideration the fact that you have the festive season and the Easter season coming up. They might seem far, but they are very close, because parents start making arrangements for travel with their children at this stage. And so we're giving that space for the parents to do all of the arrangements, and we're giving the industry time to communicate with their clients and take them on board in regard to the documents that are required for them to travel with their children. And so it's not a weak point. We're not amending the requirement for an unabridged birth certificate or a written permission in case the child is not yours. We're just simply giving the industry and their clients some time. Secondly, the requirement that people should apply in person is going to stay. It's going to stay, and that we're not announcing a postponement in regard to that. It's actually not only about the biometric. It's about South Africa knowing who is applying to come to South Africa, why they are coming, for how long, and taking their biometrics in order to be able to compare whether the same person has not applied elsewhere using a different name, which has happened in case of the Rwandan national who was murdered in Sentin. The person who murdered him, who is alleged to have murdered him, had applied in 2 different countries using 2 different names to enter the country. When we did our investigations, that's what we found. So to avoid many of those things recurring, we need to take the applications of the persons in person so that we know who is applying, what their intentions are, how long they are going to stay. This is in actual fact not only the requirement in South Africa, a number of other countries expect the same of people traveling to those countries, and so there is nothing untoward that we are doing. And again, in regard to those people, we've said, what the industry has said to us and the Minister of Tourism was that there are countries which will be affected, which are high volume source countries. That would include in Africa countries such as Kenya, countries such as Ghana, Nigeria, Ethiopia, and so on, and countries in Southern Africa. But the countries in Southern Africa are fine because they have a visa exemption. Then you have countries which are emerging markets such as China, India, Brazil, which are high volume source countries. Now, in those countries, we've said that the industry has said they will give us advice as to where to establish our visa facilitation centers so that we can assist the peoples of those countries when they apply for visas to come to South Africa. And so we are awaiting that advice, but at the present moment, we believe that our embassies, South Africa's missions abroad, where visas must be applied for, are handling the applications as well as they should. Yes, we've been advised that there are some of the missions where sufficient information was not available. The Director General 2 weeks ago addressed the conference of South Africa's ambassadors and high commissioners and clarified them with regard to the new regulations. But we've also been sending teams abroad to East Asia, to Europe, to North America, to engage staff at our foreign missions about the requirements so that they know how to handle these people. The challenge would seem to have to be in those countries where the missions are far away. And we have said that Visa Facilitation Services is ready to establish its facilities closer to the people who are affected so that they can also not travel far to apply in person, but they can go to the close proximity offices for such applications. Now, we will answer the question about children declared undesirable regardless of the fact that the person who asked the question has left. DM, I don't know if you captured the question well. I did not.
Basically,
No.
the question, Minister, was what about those children who've been declared undesirable because they didn't have the unabridged birth certificates or passports? Well, it's the asymmetry of information again, unfortunately. I think people must remember that the requirements for birth certificates were to have come into effect on the 1st of October, and they're not in place yet. And what the Minister is announcing today is a further extension of that requirement. So there are no children who've been declared undesirable because they've not had birth certificates. Simple thing.
Minister, I would just like to go to Pretoria. I think I see 2 or 3 people sitting there. I don't know if there's any questions from the Pretoria side.
We don't have any questions.
Okay, that's fine. If there aren't any questions here, I would also like to close the media briefing and allow you guys to be shocked elsewhere. No? Okay, thanks.